can plastic truly be environmentally friendly? Is it biodegradable? Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to my video. This is Ethan from Green Guy Incorporated, and let's talk chemistry. So why should you care about this? Plastic is one of the most versatile materials in the world. It's everywhere in every part of world society. The problem is plastics are not natural. Pop bottles are commonly made of polyethylene terephthalate plastic, or PET plastic. A bottle of soda is designed to be used once and then thrown away. The problem with that is it takes hundreds of years for that plastic bottle to degrade. Not biodegrade, mind you, just degrade. Before we move on, I guess it's probably best to explain what biodegradation and photodegradation means. Biodegradation is the chemical dissolution of materials by bacteria, fungi, or other biological means. Essentially, in terms of biodegradable plastics, this means that these plastics decompose by the act of living organisms. Photodegradation is the alteration of materials by light. Again, essentially what this means in terms of plastic is that the plastic will be broken down by the sun.
Alright, cool, now we know what this means, but who cares?
Pretty much, the point I'm trying to get across here is why this is important. When we get rid of our plastic bottles, we assume that they go in the recycling and they get reused. Which would be great if that's what actually happened, but unfortunately it isn't. As mentioned earlier, PET plastics are the most common use of plastics. And again, unfortunately for these plastics, they are most oftenly not used and just end up in landfills. And even though these plastics do eventually degrade after hundreds and hundreds of years, they do not biodegrade. Bacteria do not digest plastic in the environment. Instead, these plastics break down mostly by ocean punishment and UV rays, and these pieces break down smaller and smaller until they become invisible, but they are still there, part of our environment forever.
That kinda sucks, but we have biodegradable plastics, stuff you talked about earlier, right?
Biodegradable plastics are the plastic industry's way of trying to remedy the pollution problem. But again, unfortunately for us, the term biodegradable is kind of convolutedly complex. And essentially, what this means for us is that most of the time these biodegradations are actually more harmful to the environment than the original plastic itself. Biodegradable plastic is a petrochemical created plastic. Basically that means they add more things to the original container to make sure that it will break down in the presence of certain bacteria or organisms. And this is all fine and dandy, but this plastic needs a nice cocktail of the perfect bacteria, temperature, and oxygen levels to break down. So in a landfill, this just doesn't happen. Instead, a special facility is required. But in 2009, there were only 42 of these commercial facilities that were previously mentioned. On the other hand, photodegradable plastics, which are those other plastics, use light, oxygen, moisture, and heat to decay rapidly. But they also release a toxic residue, which is also not so great. And in a landfill where oxygen is scarce, they will sometimes break down into methane gas, adding more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So studies show basically that the chemicals added to these plastics to make them biodegradable are pretty much bunk anyway. And in fact, a Michigan State University study from March 2015 found that there was absolutely no difference in the additive treated plastic bags and bottles versus simply regular plastics in a landfill. Plastic is simply just not a natural substance. Apparently more research is needed to make sure that plastics can become truly biodegradable. Fortunately, that research is ongoing. But this doesn't mean that all containers are bad. There are plenty of containers on the market that aren't just biodegradable, but can even be actually composted. And yes, of course, recycling and reduction of your materials is always a good option. In conclusion, this video isn't made to scare you away from all the seemingly green products made. This was made just to show you that even though you may seemingly be making a very small environmental impact, you probably are making a lot bigger one. And funnily enough, you actually have learned about biodegradable and photodegradable plastics, even though it was so enjoyable to do so. So when a conversation or an argument starts about landfills or plastics, make sure to bring out all of this information and show your family and friends how smart you are because of Green Guy Incorporated.
Ah!